In a village cradled by ancient hills, where the sun kissed the earth each morning and the olive groves hummed with the secrets of generations, there lived a widow named Miriam. Her cottage, weathered by time, stood at the edge of the village, its stone walls holding memories of laughter that had long faded. Years ago, Miriam's husband, a carpenter named Eli, had carved their doorway with intricate vines and doves, a symbol of their love. But when illness swept through the valley, it took Eli, leaving Miriam alone with hands that once wove tapestries of beauty, now stiff with grief and age. Each dawn, Miriam would shuffle to the village well, her steps slow, her shoulders bent like the branches of the old sycamore that shaded her home. She drew water, her hands trembling so fiercely that the bucket often spilled, drawing pitying glances from the women who gathered there. The children, though kind, hesitated to approach her, for her silence felt like a wall. Even the village carpenter, a gruff man named Reuben, avoided her gaze, ashamed he could not repair the broken shutter that hung crookedly on her cottage, a task Eli would have mended in moments. But one autumn, whispers began to drift through the valley like leaves carried by the wind. A teacher from Nazareth was traveling nearby, a man named Jesus, who spoke of a kingdom not made with hands. Some claimed he healed the sick, others said he fed multitudes with scraps of bread. Skeptics scoffed, but the desperate clung to his name like a prayer. On the day he arrived, the village stirred. Farmers paused in their fields, shepherds hurried their flocks home, and mothers clasped their children close. Jesus entered not with fanfare, but with the quiet confidence of a man who knew the weight of the world, yet carried it lightly. His robe was plain, his hands calloused, not unlike their own. He stopped first at the home of a potter whose son lay feverish, and as he knelt beside the boy, the air seemed to shimmer as though heaven itself leaned near. The child's cheeks flushed with life, and the potter wept into his apron. Miriam watched from a distance, her heart a tangled knot of longing and doubt. Could such mercy reach someone as small as her? She retreated to her cottage, but as the hours passed, a strange compulsion drew her back. The sun dipped low, staining the sky amber and rose, and there, beneath Eli's carved doorway, she found him. Jesus stood before her home, his eyes tracing the doves and vines Eli had chiseled long ago. "This was made by hands that loved deeply," he said, his voice a melody that stirred the dormant places in her soul. Miriam froze, her breath catching. Without a word, he turned to her, his gaze piercing yet gentle, as if he saw not just her frailty, but the woman she had been, the woman she still was, buried beneath sorrow. He reached for her hands, gnarled and veined like the roots of the olive trees. As his fingers closed around hers, a warmth bloomed, not fire, but sunlight spilling through winter clouds. The stiffness melted, her joints softened like clay beneath a master's touch. Miriam gasped as strength surged through her arms, her spine straightening as though an unseen burden had been lifted. Tears streamed down her face, but for the first time in years, they were tears of joy. Jesus smiled, his eyes crinkling at the edges. "The Father has not forgotten your faithfulness, Miriam," he said. Then, with a nod to Reuben, who had wandered near in awe, he added, "The shutters need mending, brother. She will show you how." The village buzzed that night, but the greater miracle unfolded in the days that followed. Miriam, once bent and broken, now moved with the vigor of her youth. She replaced her own shutters, sanding the wood until it gleamed, her hand steady and sure. Neighbors began to knock on her door. A mother with a torn cloak, a shepherd with a cracked staff, even Reuben, who sheepishly asked her to teach him Eli's carvings. Miriam's cottage became a haven, her table laden with shared bread and stories. When winter came, the village faced a trial. Rains battered the valley, and the river swelled, threatening to flood the homes near its banks. Miriam rallied the women to weave sandbags from old linens, while Reuben and the men built a barrier of stones and timber. As they worked, Miriam noticed a young boy, Asher, shivering at the edge of the crowd. His family had recently arrived, fleeing hardship in the north. "Come," she said, draping her shawl over his thin shoulders. "Even the smallest hands can help." By dawn, the waters receded. The village gathered in the square, weary but united. Reuben stood before them, his voice thick with emotion. "We saved our homes not by strength alone," he said, "but because one among us remembered how to hope and taught us to do the same." All eyes turned to Miriam, who stood tall, her silver hair glowing in the morning light. Years later, travelers passing through the village would hear the tale of the widow and the carpenter. They'd admire the shutters on Miriam's cottage, now copied on every home, each carved with doves and vines. And though Jesus never returned, his presence lingered in the hands that served, the hearts that forgave, and the truth that echoed through the hills. Even the most broken things can be made new when touched by love.